All right. My name is Chris Clacio. This is not my first time running for public office. Back in 2014, I did also run to become a mayor as well, but at that time, I did not really have the wealth of community and the knowledge about our city, and so over those 7 years working with urban indigenous young people, I've really gotten to know what is missing or what's lacking within our city. And back in 2014, I decided to run for school trustee just because at that time, I believed that I want to see more representation for young professionals like I was coming out of university, as well as just started working for my first time in my entire life, and to actually have a job. That has been one of the struggles that, as a young person, no one ever taught me or educated me about that process. And for me, learning about how systems like civic government, healthcare, police, law enforcement, these systems, part of it is learning and understanding how they work. And for me, the civic government is the system that I'm really passionate about, and why I call myself a civic practitioner and a policy entrepreneur. And so back in 2018, I ran for mayor and was finally able to register my campaign, but did not have enough signatures. And you need 250 signatures to get your name nominated onto the ballot. That's the process that all mayoral candidates have to go through. For city council, school trustees and city councilors, the number is 25 signatures. And so in 2022, this election, I have been able to finally get to that process where, for me, as one of the youngest mayoral candidates, to get my name on the ballot, I think that sets the standard for that young people and young professionals have an opportunity to be a part of that civic process.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. One small note as we get going here. If you could avoid tapping the table, because this microphone is going to pick up all the bumps.
Gotcha.
Just
Yeah.
so you're aware.
Good.
Otherwise, it would just be full of bumps. Let's jump right in with Emma and your thoughts on transit in Winnipeg and what needs to happen there.
I'm Honeyfun. What was just said, I just wanted to ask you, first off, your general thoughts on the transit system, and as mayor, what would you do to improve it? And then I'll have some follow-up questions.
Back in 2014, I was really engaged in the civic process and with the mayoral candidates. And one of my very frustrations about transit was the way the city gets money to fund this transit system is through only 4 ways. That's through property taxes, user fees, government transfers, and loans from banks. I wish back then our mayoral candidates promoted fixing up the frequency within the Winnipeg transit system. That has been the call that a lot of advocates and activists have been calling for, and I totally agree that what my frustration was the lack of frequency. I wish a bus came to every stop every 15 minutes, so I know that for me, I will get to where I need to be on time and be well prepared to engage citizens. And so I wish back then that instead of putting more money into bus rapid transit, that the elected officials put more emphasis in changing the transit system back then in 2014. Then this would have, we would have a better system today, and this would not be on the topic in this election.
Thank you. You had pledged to complete the Winnipeg Transit Master Plan by 2030, and that is a little reduced from the 25-year plan that they had. How are you planning to do that?
That's a really great question. And why I feel like this is the process is understanding how does city, for me, a good friend of mine and myself have been working through an initiative called InterCivics, which basically means, for me and my friend Mark Head, InterCivics comes from 2 words, interdependence and civics. Civics for me is understanding your rights, your responsibilities, your duties, and your values to a city. And interdependence asks the question, how does running for the mayor's office, how does that work with working with city councilors, different city departments, public administration, and higher levels of government. You really need to understand how the system is divided and how they all work together. For me, as a civic practitioner and a policy entrepreneur, when I think about the concept of being a policy entrepreneur, the big topic of a policy that I always think about is basic income. And many people have an assumption that basic income is getting money to address, giving free money to citizens. No, I think that misconstrues what basic income is for me. This idea of basic income that I understand it from is this concept of consumer monetary theory. So currently, the big way we think about money is it's a form of debt. And a lot of capital projects, that's the way we fund these projects, is taking out loans to pay for the construction projects. What undermines the amount of basic income that citizens would receive is based on the concept of, to get money, people need to have a job. And that's the misconception that people don't really understand is what's broken with our economic system is people have no access to money unless they have a job. And that's how you implement projects within the city, is you hire the experts who have the expertise and the job training to develop that program. One of my frustrations with our civic government is our city planning department is underfunded compared to other cities. For example, the city of Calgary, I hear amazing things about the city of Calgary because they invest in city planners. And so I believe if the city hired more city planners who have an understanding of transit-oriented development, I think that will give politicians an understanding that it's city planners who have that knowledge to implement and figure out how do we implement that within our municipal government. And so I believe that we should invest in putting more staff in our city planning department to implement and expedite that Winnipeg Transit Master Plan.
I'm still not clear on the connection between a universal income and how that works with the transit system, though.
Let me reframe and come back to basic income. Basic income, people again misconstrue what basic income is about. And for me, I don't think about basic income as free money, as like a form of debt. As a consumer, what money is the idea that I have money to pay for services.
Right.
How can I pay for services if I don't have money?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the only way to get money is to get a job. And that's the hindrance of accessing Winnipeg Transit is I work all the time. I work in a grocery store, so my budget is very constrained. And so if I have to pay for my housing, food, and schooling, transportation, that takes away my money to pay for buying a bus pass. And that's because the whole idea is getting a job is the answer. And jobs are what interferes with how much money someone gets. Cause
Yeah, no, I get it. But are you advocating then for free transit for everyone?
Eventually. So I made a commitment, a vow on social media to follow through with the alternative municipal budgets calls to get 80% of the low-income transit bus pass to fare-free transit by 2028. I put my measurement goals in terms of in 2023 50%. The following years would increase by 10% till we reduce the low-income transit bus pass to fare-free.
Let's move on to roads, shall we? Roads, obviously, with the citizens of Winnipeg, tend to be a perennial election issue. What are you going to do about the state of the city's roads, especially when they're rated poor on the city's own map schedules, whatever that might be?
I know from previous videos, I've watched some of the videos, and some candidates have talked about the procurement process. Early in the election, I also made a commitment to change this current RFQX procurement process, like request for a proposal, into a qualification-based selection process or a quality-based selection process. So right now, the current process of an RFP is the lowest bid gets the deal all the time. Politicians make the assumption that if we pay for the lowest bid, that will get us the quality of the roads that we want. But as you can tell, the current roads infrastructure right now is it's not there, and we've invested over $1 billion over 8 years, and look at the conditions. What a qualification-based selection process will do is the city administration would set standards that construction companies must meet for them to get to be approved the tendering of that bid for that construction project. So it's a question of best value for the money, and a lot of I think this is why it's so important for politicians to understand how money works. And you don't, like for me, I have never heard politicians educating me about how the city budget process works. And so that's part of the lack of education that I think that even politicians don't know about and feel like, how does that connect to everyday citizens?
Well, the assumption is that they do. And
Yeah.
do they?
And from my perspective, not. If they did, I wouldn't be running for public office myself. And so I think this is the time to really look at process at the city and forget the politics at the moment. We really need to be fiscally responsible as elected officials. For me, I call myself fiscally responsible, socially progressive, moderately free, and environmentally conscious all over. Because right now, the environment and infrastructure go hand in hand. And if we don't try to divert people's driving habits to taking new modes of transportation, I think that will affect how much the city can afford to pay for those roads. And that's what we have to really keep on focus.
Gotcha. Are you handling active transportation, Sean? Or am I doing it off my? Calcutta. Thank you, Calcutta.
Hi, my name is Calcutta. I'm going to be asking you a couple questions about active transportation. So how important is active transportation to you, and what do you plan to do about it?
Like I said back in 2014, an elected official said that he would increase property taxes to 2.33%. And that 0.33% would be directed to paying for all 6 lines of the bus rapid transit system. I wish back then that our mayoral candidates decided to invest that 0.33% into active transportation and finishing that project. I believe that cycling infrastructure and active transportation will help us really change this mode shift from taking personal vehicles to using our other modes of transportation to get everywhere in the city. For me, I don't know how to ride a bike. And for me, transit is the process, but I also love walking. And when I walk in different neighborhoods in the city, the sidewalk conditions are so ergonomically unfriendly that it feels like I have a bad sense of mobility when I move. And that's also an aspect that I haven't heard any mayoral candidate talk about the question about accessibility to many of these services. So for me, one of the things when I think about active transportation routes, bike infrastructure, is it's not just for bikes, it's for individuals with disabilities, mobile disabilities, like in wheelchairs. They can use the active transportation network to get to where they need. And we know that sidewalks and active transportation, like the procurement process, the construction people, they don't maintain that. And we really need to maintain those accessibility standards, that the city has standards that has not been followed and implemented within the procurement process. So that's another aspect that a qualification-based selection process would help enforce the construction industry to really put more emphasis in accessibility.
Can I just jump in for a sec? You're okay with that?
Yeah.
One of the things things I'd also like to ask you about is snow clearing when it comes to active transportation. Perhaps it dovetails into the things we're going to talk about here. But obviously, people with mobility challenges or disabilities, they would, in some cases, depend on active transportation networks to get around. So how do you ensure the most basic thing, like clearing snow from those elements, whether it's a bike path or another walkable trail or whatever it might be? How do you ensure that snow actually gets cleared from them? Very meat and potatoes thing.
Within a qualification-based selection process, within that bidding process, construction companies must prove that they're able to maintain the pathways, and so part of it is understanding that the city sets a priority standards for which roads and active transportation networks need to be done first. And I think we need to emphasize the active transportation routes and sidewalks first before managing the snow on roads. I feel like the main artillery roads and regional roads, that we should get rid of the snow on those roads, but for the residential areas, sidewalks, we should be putting that emphasis first.
And then you plan to dedicate 0.33% of property tax increase to active transportation. What is your response to Winnipeggers who might feel that this is too much of the increase to dedicate?
Just another thing that earlier I was talking about the civic budget process. Not many citizens understand how the budget process works. So for the city, the budget is broken down to two parts. One is the capital costs. The second are the operational costs. The operational costs are those everyday purchases, for example, salaries, fuel costs. And on the capital budget expenses, that's for one-time purchases like construction projects, maintenance of roads. And so I rather see that money from I want to create a 4-year participatory budget process within city government. So right now the mayor's budget is 1.8 million. I would like to see that increase to 2 million, and direct some of the capital budget money to the 15 other city councilors to have the city councilors' ward allowance be 2 million as well. That way, if citizens have an interest in getting their sidewalks cleared in their local neighborhood, that they would go to this office of civic engagement that I've talked about, and they would connect you to the key city councilors and the key staff people who would implement those projects. So this is a way for, I believe that 2.33% is that was already committed within the 4-year budget process that back in 2019 that was implemented. So for me to increase or decrease that amount, I think that is an injustice to what the city councils have already determined as the amount in the current budget process. So my commitment is to maintain that 2.33% for 2023, and talk with other city councilors to see how much that increase will be for the next budget process, which is from 24 to 2027.
My understanding is that in the new council in the new year, a motion will be put forward, likely by Debbie Sharma, to in fact increase ward allowances for councillors and I think separate out the amount that assistants get paid as a separate item instead of it coming out of the entire budget. So you're in agreement. You want those ward budgets to go up.
Correct.
Thank you. Let's move on to homelessness.
Hi, I'm Shauna. How important is homelessness to you, and what is your plan to address this issue in the city?
I really love that question. But I just have to say to citizens is I'm tired of hearing politicians talking about the issues. For me, working with urban indigenous young people, they have told me that let's talk about things we want in our life. Instead of talking about issues, let's talk about things as topics, because a topic has an issue, a solution, and an action in them. And for me, addressing homelessness, the only way to do that is to reframe this conversation about homelessness, and let's not think about it as homelessness, but think of it as a homesickness. Because whose land are we standing on? For me, as someone who comes from the Filipino diaspora, basically meaning that I'm a Filipino from overseas, I was born here. And so my relationship to my community has been very disconnected. And that's the same experience that I've heard young people, urban Indigenous young people, have been telling me. Throughout my work, I've understand that if we really want to address homelessness and this homesickness, we have to center our solutions to the problem, to the lived experiences of our relatives on the streets. For me, those are not just homeless people. Those are my family members. And for us politicians to say that they are a problem, that is an injustice to our civic responsibility. Like I said, for me, civics is understanding your rights, your responsibilities, your duties, and your values to a city. And for me, the only way to address homelessness and this homesickness is through long-term city planning. Back in 2014, a mayoral candidate talked about city planning, long-term city planning. That profession, there's other names it goes by: regional planning, urban planning. This language is inaccessible for a lot of everyday citizens, and that is that's really confusing for me. And so, for me, this is why I believe in increasing the city planning department staffing, because I believe that the connection to land use and basically city planning for me is think about the future. That's what planning is all about. You have financial plans, ward plans, financial plans. It's all, there's so many plans, but what a plan is thinking about the future, and none of the politicians are thinking about addressing poverty, and that's the end game that I believe. The city does have a Winnipeg poverty reduction strategy that I would love to put more funding to address this concern.
Yeah, but one of the weaknesses of that particular plan is that it has no benchmarks. It has no stated goals in terms of actions, right? It is a plan to be put on a shelf. What do you do with a plan like that? How do you put any actions in place?
And this is my way of reframing this conversation. I don't want to see a poverty reduction strategy. I want a plan to abolish poverty in our city. Let's aim for something higher than just 4 years and 10 years from now. I'm not running to be a typical politician. I'm thinking about 10,000 years into the future. And for me, are we still going to live in a society where homelessness, reconciliation, justice for Black lives, anti-Asian hate, will we still live in a world 10,000 years from now like that? I think this is the time to really rethink, what do we want for our city? What's our vision for our city? And that's my biggest frustration with our elected officials, is they're not inspiring us to demand more, see a better future that involves everyone to be at that table. And for me, how you do that is through transit-oriented development. And transit-oriented development is using your land use with your transportation network. And that's the division between our public administration right now, is our city departments do not work together. They actually work in silos. And to create, for me, I have made a commitment to consolidate a few city departments into a special operating agency for transit-oriented development. I think this will enforce city planners and engineers to work together to really look at our Winnipeg plan and strategically use the transportation system to measure how they use the land use around transit-oriented development. So that's my thinking process.
If you move it to a special operating agency, it therefore becomes at arm's length from city council, though. Are you worried about accountability?
For me, I'm not I don't work within government at the moment, and for me, the only way that I will know how civic systems are working is to be elected as a candidate in this in our municipal government, and that's the difference that I want to work with city councilors who have been there for many years, and to work and to use my leverage as the highest position to work with city council and work with city planning, city departments to better efficiently use our resources and staff to address a lot of these plans that we have in our city.
And how much would you be putting into this initiative?
Can you be more specific? Which initiative?
Like towards homelessness, like your action plan, how this is gonna have like a cost to it. What does that look like?
What that looks like, I have to talk with city councilors. I believe that city councilors do have a plan, but they're not educating citizens about what that plan is and communicating it to us. So for me, when I get elected, I want to talk with city councilors and really support them in implementing that project. As the mayor, I have to think about the bigger. I have to keep track of the bigger picture, and the only way for for city services to get better is for citizens' input in designing those systems. And that's why I've proposed the creation of an Office of Civic Engagement and a 4-year participatory budget process to let citizens implement these ideas in their local neighborhoods by going to this office and working with their city councils. And with city councils having $2 million in their city budget, in their ward allowance, that gives opportunity for citizens to use the taxes that they give to the city to be used within their ward. So for me, I have to think about whose role is what in city government. As mayor, my role is to look at policy. That's why it's called an executive policy committee. It's to look at policy and let city councilors be the one to allocate the resources to addressing citizens' needs in their local wards.
We need to move on. We've only got about 10 minutes left. So I'm just going to ask you to very briefly talk about the state of the Winnipeg Police Service budget, which is 27% of the operating budget every year. What are you going to do about either limiting the growth of the budget? Do you plan freezing it? Do you plan to cut it? What are your thoughts on the WPS budget?
That's a great question, because when the city proposed for a consultation process to redesign the police funding model, I actually attended all 5 of the workshops. And as I looked through that experience, number 5 was capping the police budget. I think that for me, I don't want to pander to different communities, because for me, I have to really think about everyone's needs. And for me, when I hear politicians talking about defunding the police, for me, as a civic practitioner and policy entrepreneur that has this concept of consumer monetary theory, I'm losing my train of thought, but this is.
So you went to the 5 workshops. Number 5 was the model of just capping the budget at its current state. I believe that's where we are at.
Yes.
And you were going down the road of maybe, is that your position on it?
Yes, I have made a vow that I would commit to 20% of that city budget be directed to the police, or equivalent to the 18.3% of the fire paramedic services. The reason I believe that capping the police budget would help reduce crime from my perspective is that what senior administration within the police department don't understand is how to use data, how to read data. I've worked with urban indigenous young people in terms of community health research, and so when I speak about data, I'm talking about qualitative data and quantitative data. Quantitative data is those statistical numbers and those numerical numbers. And qualitative data is storytelling and expert knowledge. So I don't believe that the police service understands that quantitative data and how to read that data. I believe if you cap that budget, you will enforce the police budget to really allocate their police staffing connected to the analytical data to direct their key police officers to the specific hotspots in the city that crime is happening.
Okay.
And so that's my position.
Great, so just so we're clear, you wanna cap the budget to 20% of the operating budget?
Of the total city budget.
That's correct. Well, the 20% of the city's operating budget will go to the Winnipeg Police Service, and that's its cap.
Okay, yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Like I said earlier, it's operational costs and the capital costs. The current 26.5%, 85% of that city budget goes to salaries. 15% goes to the capital budget of the police. So capping the 20% will cap the operation and the capital costs together.
Let's move on to crime prevention, our final topic of the day.
Hi, my name is Kelvin Mulugeta. I'm going to be asking you a couple questions about crime prevention. So if I could just get your general thoughts, how you feel like crime prevention is happening and working in the city, and what do you plan to do to make it better?
That's a really great question because back in 2014, I started working with urban indigenous young people. Working with urban indigenous people in the North End, they create an initiative called Meet Me at the Bell Tower, which was a Stop the Violence and Building Community initiative within the North End. At that time, when urban indigenous young people saw a rise in violence back in 2011, and November 18th, 2011, urban indigenous young people saw the violence that was happening. And they were sick and tired of losing families that they were close to. And when I think about acknowledging why there is an increase in crime, is I feel like politicians don't understand that it's about bringing people together at the table. And the way that our political climate is right now, we are fighting amongst each other. Well, we should be focused on the solutions to the problems. And for me, this is why I would like to see a four-year participatory budget process go to city councilors to have that $2 million to direct that to community initiatives like Meet Me at the Bell Tower. Meet Me at the Bell Tower did not have any funding from any funders. It was based on urban indigenous young people building relationships within the North End and using those relationships to really address concerns that have affected their communities. And so for me, as someone who does not live in the North End specifically, I have no right to direct people to finding solutions. My job as a mayor is to support city councilors, support citizens to really hear their concerns and find a way to direct my energy to supporting the key people who have those skill sets to implement the initiatives that lived experiences of residents in their local neighborhood. That's the only way we will actually truly fundamentally see a reduction in crime, is to give more power to the people, to citizens of Winnipeg. Because citizens of Winnipeg, our relatives on the streets, they are citizens as well. And we have to have them at the table in how to address public safety within our city.
And so you mentioned that you wanted to really give that power back to the people and kind of assist people who are already doing these things and already aiding in crime prevention efforts and stuff like that. How much exactly are you planning to commit to funding organizations kind of like Bear Clan, Sabe Peace Walkers, and organizations like that that are already conducting crime prevention efforts in the city? How much exactly are you going to plan towards that?
That's a really great question. I've been very consistent that it's $2 million. So if this Office of Civic Engagement be the one directing the needs of those community groups. So it has to be the community groups, the Office of Civic Engagement, and your city councilors and these and other key sectors to come to the table, go to this office, ask the Office of Civic Engagement, these are the solutions that we want to see implemented. And that amount, I don't know how much that amount will be needed within that. Again, That's why I believe that city councilors need to have more power and be able to direct money that taxpayers give the city to pay for these services.
And then how do you plan on kind of doing that and acting that out? You mentioned that you wanted to give city councilors more power to be able to direct taxpayer dollars, and you wanted to increase their budget. How are you planning to do that and kind of commit to having that done as mayor?
In public office, it's not the politicians that implement new programmings or implement multi-year budgets. It's the city administration that do the work. And so for me, again, it's been a rough day today. I'm already losing my train of focus. But can you repeat that question?
Oh yeah, of course. So how exactly are you going to kind of, like you mentioned, give that power to city councilors and have them be able to control taxpayer dollars and increase the budget? How are you going to actually make that happen and kind of act those things out?
Thank you. Elected officials don't need to move oceans, they need to move motions in council meetings. And so one of my first commitments is to move a motion to the CAO, the Chief Financial Officer, and the Office of Civic Engagement to implement expanding the powers of the Office of Public Engagement into this Office of Civic Engagement. And I would also like to, I have made a commitment that, a vow that I want to abolish the 311 system and give it to more, give that staff to this Office of Civic Engagement so that city councilors have an army of city staff working to create local economic development. For me, that is what we want in this city, is local economic development. And for me, economics, I always made the assumption that when politicians were talking about economics that they were talking about money. No, money is a different concept, a different system. Economics is knowing how to use your resources. And resources could mean wealth, money, but it also means people, people's time, people's energy. And we need to put our time and energy and have citizens be the leaders and implement the projects that they know that will work in their local community.
Okay, thank you. Those are all the questions I had.
That's all the questions we have and the time that we have. Thank you, Chris Clacio.
And thank you for this experience. Like, this is a learning experience, and I'm so happy to be able to be at this table because it's my inspiration to see powerful matriarchs in the city be the lead. For me, I believe that missing and murdered Indigenous women is a topic that we all care about, and the only way to address that is having matriarchs in our city be the lead and be in higher levels of power in civic government. So I believe that the future of our city is bright, and we should always be hopeful about the future because the future hasn't been decided yet.